So today I'm joined by Mehrdad Mahdjoubi, founder and CEO of Orbital Systems. Welcome, Mehrdad.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
All right, so we got a very interesting topic today. Your company's mission focuses on redesigning how we think about the planet's most precious and scarce resource, which is really water. And I want to talk about, why did you start with showers? But let me just kind of take a step back a little bit. When we think about water and usage in a bigger context, you have issues that are kind of geographic as well. So for example, in Central Asia, there is a sea called the Aral Sea, was one of the fourth largest body of fresh water on the planet. But over the years, it's been siphoned off for irrigation and farming and so forth. In California, grow a lot of agriculture. And one of those produce is alfalfa. And that alone consumes some quarter of California's irrigation water. And then in the Southwest, 90% of Colorado's rivers water is diverted into the desert for agriculture and irrigation. Now, closer to home, in terms of residents and so forth, a lot of water is wasted around lawn sprinklers, fountains, swimming pool. For example, swimming pool loses some 1,000 gallons a month to evaporation. And of course, there's washing the car on the driveway, washing dishes by hand. So when you have all of these issues and big losses in water, why showers?
Sure, you're absolutely right. There are so many areas where we are wasteful. I would say, even though, like you mentioned, the swimming pools are, a massive use of water. Not everybody has, a swimming pool, but the shower is, typically for an individual person, that is by far the biggest water consuming daily application. And I would say it's also super relatable. And I think it really goes into this idea of why do we waste water, or why do we actually use the water the way we use water? And for example, in Sweden, where I live, we use drinking water for flushing the toilets, which is, in my opinion, even more bizarre. And I don't really think it's like a personal issue or it's like anybody's real fault. I think it's more of a system error or like a system flaw, where we, built most of our water infrastructure. We built it several hundred years ago, and we never really thought about, I don't even think somebody even asked what is the most efficient use. It was just like, we need water in every tap, in every shower, in every, faucet. And then it was built and nobody, questioned it. And we're still, keep doing this every day.
Now, let's talk a little bit about India. So India has some serious water shortage issues. And with some of those cities becoming megacities where you have 10 or more millions of people, populace in a central location, it's becoming a real dire situation. And the consumption equation is outpacing the lack of infrastructure, and particularly the catch and store rainwater. And of course, in India, not everybody, of course, is using showers. So one of the things I want to just make sure that the audience understands is the notion of showers is very common. So for example, in America, it's very common to take not only a daily shower, but sometimes multiple after the gym.
Exactly.
In Europe, maybe it's less frequent, but at least developed and less developed countries, showers are not that common, and they have bigger issues around just not having enough rainwater. So how do we frame all this so that it really does impact the planet as a whole?
So I think every resource has a supply side and a demand side. And if you look at energy, it's a perfect example where we have seen that there has been centuries long focus on increasing the supply. And just a couple of decades ago, there has been some recent progress on actually making the demand side more efficient. We're talking about transition from, classic light bulbs to LEDs, for example. And I think this is exactly the same path we need to go with water. So there are so many large projects focusing on increasing the supply to these cities, increasing the supply to people so they can have, daily water for whatever use, if it's sanitation or, drinking. I think that is not enough. We need to focus on the demand side. What I mean is, why do you need to use 100 liters or 25 gallons for a 10-minute shower? Why can't we do it with less? For example, do we need to have drinking water for the laundromat. Like, do we need to wash our clothes with drinking water, or why do we need to use, you know, like 20 gallons for washing our clothes? Like, I think it has to be, you know, we have to focus on both the supply side and the demand side. And unfortunately, nobody has really done anything on the demand side so far. And I think that's where we are really pioneering our technology.
Now, as a designer, one of the things that you probably think hard about oftentimes is the notion around behavioral change or modification.
Mm-hmm.
So shower is a great example where even if you had a closed loop system and it recycles a big percentage of that, some people are just prone to having 5-minute showers, whereas others, that's the way they relax. It's like a spa treatment, and they choose to shower for half an hour. How do you change the behavior in addition to the technologies?
So my philosophy is actually that, you know, changing people is much harder than making a new technology. So what I mean by that is, we have seen for the last 30 years, you know, technologies that try to reduce the water use by, for example, you know, putting in air bubbles in the water stream, or we even have great examples where atomizes the water head. So it's almost like you know, shower in a mist or like under an aerosol spray can. And although these solutions do reduce water use, they come with a price, and the price in this case is not, you know, monetary. It's more of a user experience or a comfort. And I think that is the main reason. Whenever you have to ask somebody to sacrifice their behavior or even change their behavior, I think you don't really have such a scalable solution. And really, like one of like the main benefits in with our technology is that you don't need to, you know, stop taking a shower, or like, you know, take a shorter shower, or even be reminded of the fact that the shower is anything different. It's even more flow than a regular shower, and, you know, still saving. So I think that's the kind of technologies that are easy to adopt, because they're not asking the user to change their behavior.
So I know we've intentionally been kind of teasing the audience about what your solution is. So let's get into it. Is it pronounced OS?
Yeah, Oasis Shower is our first product.
So tell us about the closed loop recycling shower system. How does it work?
So basically, it consists of sensors, purification, pump, and a heater, and a digital display, which, you know, you regulate temperature with. So in a regular 10-minute shower, if you have 2.5 gallons per minute or 10 liters per minute, 10 minutes would require 100 liters or 25 gallons of water. And because people typically shower in body temperature degree, you need about 5 kilowatt hours of energy going in to heat the water. And, you know, you have a linear use of water. So for every minute, you have another 2.5 gallons that is being flushed away. With our system, you need less than 1 gallon to get the loop going. We have a pump that circulates the water. We have a, you know, filter and a UV light that sterilizes the water, so it's even cleaner than regular tap water. And then we have, like, what I think is like the, you know, kind of the genius of the product is that in the drain we have a smart sensor that analyzes the water quality 20 times per second. If you have an unnatural high amount of contaminations in the water, for example, shampoo, we detect that, and that water we don't reuse, simply because of the high marginal cost of purifying that water. So in a 10-minute shower, average shampoo session or soaping session is less than 30 seconds. So even if you have 2 shampoo sessions in 10-minute shower, you have about 1 minute of the water where the water is unnaturally contaminated. We don't recycle that. The rest of the shower is all being looped. That way you can save up to 90% of the water, up to 80% of the energy, while at the same time having a better shower experience than a regular shower. And that is, of course, because we control the temperature digitally, and we have a pump that monitors the flow. So you have always the right temperature, always the nice high flow rate of the water. And yeah, saving quite a lot of water. So I would say just a smarter way of using the resource.
Yeah, I really like the way you guys approach the engineering problem, which is that some engineers would have tried to recycle 100% of the shower water, And of course, you have all sorts of contaminants, but the fact that you partitioned it as segmented and realized that, you're right, there's the kind of shampooing and lathering aspects, but once you're clean, that water is literally clean from the shower head down to the drain. So ability to just recycle that is fairly minimal, and the expense and the cost to that and the maintenance is relatively low. So it makes a lot of sense. Now, I want to focus on a little bit of your background, how this ties into your startup as well. You've won a lot of design awards, and you have a background in MFA. When we think about some of the most innovative companies that lead with design, such as Dyson, Japanese design firm Nando that makes speakers. How can design be used to solve some of the biggest existential crises, such as climate change in this world?
Sure. So I think, being an industrial designer, I think the main difference of the design process and classic engineering process is that classic engineering is so much focused on optimization. I think, and engineers are really good at it too, so it's not something negative. It's just like, how can we make things, faster, stronger, better, durable, cheaper? I think the design process, or being a designer, it's more of a like, how can we flip things around completely? It's not necessarily that every time it works. I would say if you want to have a sure bet on getting an incremental optimization or benefit, you should go the engineering way. But if you're betting on changing or disrupting an industry, I would say going with a designer, it's probably more likely. And that's basically the whole thing. Like how can we? And this is actually so. I graduated from a Swedish school of industrial design at Lund University, and during my time at school, I was invited to be part of a project at Johnson Space Center, NASA, basically looking at the challenges of going to Mars, living on Mars. So that was when I really had to, start pushing myself in thinking of, a completely new, environment. And what I really found inspiring was, so if this is our new habitat, if this is our new home, how would we build the best infrastructure in terms of water in our new home? And, one way of going about it is like, let's figure out how we did it on Earth and not repeat our mistakes, very simplistic, in that sense. Then like realizing how, I would say inefficient it is with, just like starting analyzing, like we're, flushing the toilets with drinking water again. I can't get past that, a bizarre fact. Like this whole single point of failure. So if you have one utility supplying a whole city, if something happens there, the whole city's population is going to have polluted water. So really looking at it from a larger perspective before digging into each application, I would say that's one way.
Yeah, I really like the context of the Mars missions, because what you're saying is when you frame it up in a different context, the fact that you don't have a ample supply of natural resources, you have to work with a finite set, and you have to create closed loop systems where you're recycling and you're being very smart and efficient about it, and nothing goes to waste. And I think that forces you to work with constraints, and you've developed orbital systems with that mindset in mind. Now let's go back a little bit, because I'm sure there are some buyers that might potentially have some questions. Can you talk about some of the kind of concerns or maybe objections that people have around that, and how do you allay that?
Sure. So one like the first thing people think about is like, so how is this different from a regular shower in terms of adoption or like implementation? So I would say the only main difference you need to think about in terms of the technology that is different is that you need power. You need power to supply the pump, the heater, and that is like, I would say, the main installation part. Actual installation time less than an hour. However, you need to keep in mind that basically every shower that people buy today, they buy it when they are refurbishing or renovating the whole bathroom. So this is always done in when you're doing your whole remodeling project. And at that time, you basically have to make sure to have power supply in your bathroom that you typically wouldn't have anyways. So that's one thing I would say. Then you have the factor where so the loop itself requires less than 1 gallon, about 3 liters. When you're done with your shower, that water will be flushed away. So the next person gets their own, let's call it, loop of water. So that's basically the two most important factors I would want to mention here. The technology itself, can be built into a cabinet or in the wall or in the room next to your shower area. So pretty versatile, I would say.
Okay. So when you think about your sales strategy, yes, of course, you have the actual homeowners or residents, and maybe property owners, but really another customer segment that you have to think about are the contractors, because the contractors are going to be recommending to homeowners these options. So how do you go about educating them, and what's your way of ensuring that you have that wide distribution?
So this is actually a very new challenge for us, which is talking to you. So basically, we've been spending the last couple of years of perfecting the solution, making it mature enough to be able to bring it to the market. We're at the point where we have several hundred of existing customers, and we're really going market by market. And we've been selling to both contractors and developers, and also hotel owners, because you get scale benefits, and it's easier for us to have 300 units in one place than 300 units scattered around, or before we have a proper aftermarket support network. I would say in terms of the consumer segment, we go direct, via web, and we just make sure that there are enough partners on the ground that can do the aftermarket support, whatever that may be. And yeah, market by market, I would say.
Yeah, when a good example of this is when you think about urinals that have gone from kind of motion sensor to even urinals that use no water at all, actually.
Exactly.
And think about who are the biggest adopters. It's not the residents or the direct consumers, it's actually businesses. So when I think about gyms and places like hotels, facilities that provide ways for people to shower on a large volume, it hits the bottom line. So if you can actually reduce their variable costs of water and maintenance, to me, it's a sure win. And you certainly have the skill in terms of the sales distribution as well. Well, this is very exciting. I can't wait to get a hold of it on my own.
Nice.
Have a close loop for myself. Any last word around what your mission is and what you're trying to do with Orbital Systems?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the shower is really just the beginning. I think you will see more applications from us as we, grow the company. And you're absolutely right. We start with the commercial segment, but next step is for sure the residential segment. And I think really it's more about how we use water in the most efficient way, addressing a structural flaw rather than just the shower. It's just that it's so, I would say, obvious to stop wasting as much water.
Correct. And how can people get a hold of your work and also follow you personally?
Orbital Systems, orbital-systems.com, and then our Instagram as well. And I'm on LinkedIn as everybody else is.
Great. So today I've been joined by Mehrdad Mahdjoubi, CEO of Orbital Systems. Thank you so much, Mehrdad.
Thank you, Scott.